Good morning, everyone. That was fabulous. I love getting kind of the behind-the-scenes story of what happens and how this all comes to fruition. I'm Amy Skillman. I'm also a trustee of the American Folklife Center. It's been truly an honor to be here these last couple of days and to serve as a trustee on the board with everybody else. I love documenting ourselves, the concept of documenting ourselves. I think it's such a critical way to work for the American Folklife Center to work. It's important for communities to have their own agency. We're hearing local perspectives on what matters and how things are valued. As Yvette said this morning, it seems to be influencing greater respect for local traditions among the communities by doing this. So I think this is a fabulous project that's been going on for these last several years. I get to introduce two more of these inspiring projects. The first one is Alex Lumelsky. And he will be talking about Chaldeans, the portrait of evolving community. The Chaldean Community Foundation has preserved stories about America's Chaldean community, which is a minority ethnic group from northern Iraq. Chaldeans bring rich cultural traditions that date back to ancient Mesopotamia. In the United States, these traditions continue to evolve, especially during the past 2 decades. The U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, followed by the rise of ISIS, has resulted in thousands of refugees arriving in the United States, settling mainly in southeast Michigan. The community responded by establishing the Chaldean Community Foundation, which they originally thought they might serve 4,000 people. They now serve 40,000 clients annually in the region. The influx of new arrivals and their immersion with established Chaldean American families has had a tremendous impact on the cultural makeup of the community. Alex has served as a project manager for Chaldeans Portrait of Evolving Community, this project, guiding the collection, production, and submission of all assets, you probably did the metadata, right, to the library. Alex has been actively involved with the Chaldean Community Foundation since its inception through his design studio, which is called Sky Creative. He currently serves as the creative director for Chaldean News, managing the news staff and contributing to news products. So please welcome Alex Lumelsky.
Thank you, Amy. Just set up my teleprompter here. I just want to say I have a newly found appreciation for the metadata spreadsheet following that last presentation. So as Amy said, my name is Alex Lumelsky. I'm the principal designer with Sky Creative, and I've been working with the Chaldean News for the past 20 years as their creative director, and they are an affiliate of the Chaldean Community Foundation. So when this opportunity to work on this project, as an immigrant myself, when this opportunity came up, I jumped at it because I wanted to tell the story of this immigrant group, which is a very small group in the scheme of things. As Amy mentioned, they come from north of Iraq. They are Christian, which is what makes them different from most of the Iraqi population. And I wanted to, because I've been affiliated with them for more than 20 years, and really my whole life growing up in the Metro Detroit area, I really look forward to working on this project. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment to thank, first of all, the Library of Congress team, in particular Meg, who was always there whenever a question came up. And they did come up a lot. I also want to, I don't know if Miriam is here, but hi Miriam, okay. Thank you for your patience while we learn how to navigate federal forms, okay. and of course Jason, who helped write me when I was wrong. And I also want to thank some foundation colleagues. First of all, Susan Smith, she's a gifted grant writer who guided our application process. And my partner in crime, Sarah Kittle, who is the Chaldean News editor. And she scheduled most of the actual interviews, and she did a lot of the interviewing herself. And I think without her help, I would still be working on the metadata spreadsheet today. And then I also want to just lastly thank my colleague and friend for 20 plus years, Martin Manna, who is, without him, the Chaldean Community Foundation would not exist. He's a tireless advocate of his community, and he is one of the original founders of the Chaldean News, and he is one of the founders of the Chaldean Community Foundation. And he's working all the time to help not only the newly arrived refugees who have come to Metro Detroit beginning with the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 and all the chaos that followed that, and then really with the ISIS destroying the native villages in northern Iraq, which gave rise to the Chaldean Community Foundation. He has been working, he and the entire team have been working tirelessly to basically get support for the refugees in the Metro Detroit area, and also to get the Iraqi government to help support what remains of the Chaldean communities in northern Iraq. Before 2003, the population, I mean, these estimates are hard to be exact, but the estimated population of Christians in Iraq was about 1.5 million people. And after the last 20 years, that population has dwindled down to perhaps about 200,000, and actually I heard a figure of 120,000 just more recently. So it's becoming more and more difficult for these people to stay in their native lands, in part because of the political unrest and the wars, also in part because of climate change. I know water supply is really a big challenge for them. So these guys work to try and repair those communities. So some of you may be wondering, who are the Chaldeans? Amy did a pretty good overview, but I just want to say, I don't know why it's spelled with a CH, when a K would have sufficed, but a lot of people don't know that it's pronounced Chaldeans, not Chaldeans. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page about that. They began migrating to Metro Detroit about a century ago, and they very quickly became owners of grocery stores in Detroit. And that was, like many immigrant groups, they started in the grocery store business, and over generations they progressed into other work. So for this project, our goal was to capture a portrait of the community. I think what we created was more like a sketch, because the more stories we heard, the more we realized just how much more there is to explore. So there are many more stories to tell, but one challenge we ran into, aside from the inevitable technical challenges at the beginning, one challenge we ran into was I had hoped to be able to share more of the refugee stories, but we found that a lot of people who are recent new Americans were very reluctant to share those. Maybe it's fear of persecution, or maybe it's just not wanting to look back at the trauma. But those stories were difficult to get, and whenever we sat down with people, what we would inevitably hear was more like gratitude for the life they have now, rather than talking about the suffering that took place before. And maybe there's a life lesson in there somewhere. So today, Michigan's Chaldean population is approaching 200,000. 187,000 is the last official number, but that was about a year ago. And they contribute almost $18 billion to the Michigan economy. And, they have managed to assimilate into American culture while retaining the traditions. And they do that. I think the church has a lot to do with that. And just whenever two Chaldeans meet, they always want to know the last name, which tells them what village they're from and whether they're cousins. Okay, so they're very tightly connected. And I want to play you this film, which is kind of like a trailer. This film uses the footage we captured throughout the year, and it's like a trailer for a documentary that could be made about the community.
To come and see and learn who we are, where do we come from, and how difficult it was to come to the free land of America.
Ambition and courage to leave Iraq and travel across the world to come to America.
My dad worked a long time. He worked for 20 years, no day off but Christmas. And all he talked about was work, work, work.
You know, the Chaldeans are known to be family, work, church.
A little more than 1 year ago, the Library of Congress announced a unique opportunity to contribute collections to their American Folklife Center. In 2024, the Chaldean Community Foundation was one of only 10 organizations nationwide to be selected for this honor. The project's goal was to capture the rich cultural traditions of Chaldean Americans and preserve them in a national archive for generations to come. The resulting project is titled Chaldeans, Portrait of a Community. To begin with, the focus was on culture. We began by heading to Grand Rapids, Michigan for the first ever International Chaldean Convention.
So I've been a Chaldean priest for about 12 years. And in that time, I've had the pleasure to serve mostly the greater Detroit area, but also in different parts of the world, like in Australia, New Zealand, and Chicago, and visited many other churches as well. After having served in so many different places, came to me in prayer that all these different Chaldean communities were kind of functioning independently of each other. And our church has never looked like this before, where we're so far from each other geographically. And so I decided to take it to the bishop and say maybe we can have an event in Michigan, and we called it the International Chaldean Convention, to bring everyone together and kind of define a role of where we're going as a people and as a church.
Being in the Detroit area, it feels like home, but just to know that there are more Chaldeans out there and that we could all get together. And also, our traditions, our faith, our culture. And this was very faith-based.
I heard about it through church, through the priest announcing it at Mass, and it sounded great. So yeah, see, I'm seeing a bunch of people I know from all over, so this is great.
I'm here with Brother Augustine from San Diego. Hello, brother. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm doing good.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So I was born in Baghdad, grew up in Syria for a little bit, and then I moved here in 2008. Got acclaimed to the culture and the language, and then eventually I studied biology, graduated from San Diego State, and then I entered the monastery in 2018.
With so much joy to see Chaldeans that I've never met from Australia. It's like meeting cousins that I knew I had but never met. And it's such a good feeling.
My name is Mark. I'm from Sydney, Australia, from St. Thomas Chaldean Catholic Church in Bosley Park.
And then why did you guys decide to come?
Well, we came to see our own people, see how big the community is in the States. And we're actually shocked. It's amazing out here.
We've heard a lot about the Chaldean Americans.
So can you tell me about the Chaldean Australian community?
The Chaldean Australian community. How much time do you have? What do you think?
Honestly, I reckon we're strong. We're stronger than ever. Like, we're getting bigger by the week. Our youths are getting bigger, our community's getting bigger.
praise to God, it's really flourished in the last couple of years.
Definitely.
We actually had Father Matthew spend a year in Australia and really help us kickstart our youth ministries. And since then, the fruits have really started to bear.
We also paid a visit to the Arab and Chaldean Festival in Detroit, a tradition that has been celebrated for more than 50 years.
So I've been coming to this festival since I was a kid. I remember it very, very well. Well, some of my best memories growing up. We do everything ethnic. So we do the potato chop, kubahalep, borek, hamad kupi, big kubba, everything your mom used to make in the kitchen. Sakrata fosra, sakrata gupta, kula majinat. Been in business for 15 plus years. So we've been part of the community. The community's been supporting us forever, and we can hope to continue. I mean, the singing and the dancing, and at night when everybody just gets together and the families, so many families, all the kids running around. Our history, our blood comes from Jesus, you know, we were all in the same area. It's Kep and El Khosh and everything. God walked these lands, you know? So we go way back.
Chaldeans have long excelled in entrepreneurship, filling vital niches within their local communities and beyond. The Chaldean news team focused on capturing the stories of family-owned businesses, women entrepreneurs, and the rise of Chaldean-run franchises.
Being Chaldean is, I think we grew up in families that are very entrepreneurial. You know, when we would have Sunday dinners, even when we were young, and when we had it with our children and my in-laws, and like my father-in-law is Eddie Jonah, and we would have Sunday dinners, and we would always talk about business, opportunities, and our families. Growing up Chaldean, you have that entrepreneurial spirit, and you have that spirit to be in business for yourself.
I went to New York when I first bought Market Square. And I toured Manhattan for a while, and I went into just about every store in Manhattan, and I saw the way they were merchandising, the way they were just what kind of food they were selling, things like that. And I came back with the idea that that's what I want to do. I want to cram as much inventory as I can in a small building, have a wide variety of everything, and I think that's going to work, and it did.
You were working crazy hours back then. I mean, I want to say, you were working open to close, and we would wait for Dad. It was like 10 o'clock, and I would stay up and we'd wait in the front bathroom window for you to come home.
Yeah.
And we'd see for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, and then go to bed. And, it was just, kind of what it was back then.
My dad worked a long time. He worked for 20 years, no day off but Christmas. And all he talked about was just work, work, work. Actually, we worked too much, but yes. And by working really hard, we became really good because we're there every day. My dad worked till he was 84.
Sahara was founded in 1981 by Sadatisha, my husband. And he started off in Ferndale and subsequently opened a location in Oak Park. And we've been in Oak Park since 1984. We love to bring what Mom made and Grandma made at home, put it on the menu, and wow our customers.
When I was working and starting at Market Square in high school, I was working behind the deli. That's where I learned how to hold a knife, how to learn how to, cut food, talk about food. And that really has been a focus of mine.
My brothers and I, we had an interest in the gyms working out at a young age. We're probably all trying to, catch up to my dad, who was a bodybuilder. Right. We did martial arts when we were kids like he did. We started lifting weights. We started at the bottom. We were clean up boys and janitorial type stuff. And then we started learning the front desk and reception and check-in type situation. Eventually learned sales and the back end. So we kind of learned our way up from the bottom to management positions. we enjoyed the business, and we kind of just grew up in it, and we've stayed in it ever since.
I was blessed with a great family, great sons. They take care of everything. I could retire 20, maybe 25 years ago if I wanted to, and they could have handled it. I signed everything over to them about 24 years ago, and I remember my lawyers thought I was crazy. They said, "You're signing every asset you own to your kids. They can tell you to screw off." I said, "Well, if that happened, I'd rather not be here anyways." So that was not any of my concern. And they took over the business and running it, etc.
Anything you do, you want to own a building, you have to know the construction of the building, how to pull the weeds out of the grass. You have to be ready to do everything. I don't believe the owner is above any of that. The owner has to be able to get down and dirty and then lead by example.
As an architect, I always put myself in the perspective of our clients and what do our clients really want and what do they really need. And many times, I think of what we design in terms of our clients to make them successful. One of the first projects we did was for a very good friend and a person who's been a longtime client of ours is Johnny Carmo. We've done a lot of projects for Johnny, not only his homes, but the market squares and the market fresh. And we continue to do work with Johnny. His sons are now in the business. Just like my son is in the business, and now our sons will do, hopefully, business together for many years.
Well, I'm very lucky to have had an amazing mentor, my father as an architect and father and partner in the business. And so looking towards the future, our goal is to continue doing what we do and create these special projects and great relationships. And it's exciting. We love what we do.
Right now we have over 240 employees. I got 3 managers in every store. And my 2 sons also, are the chief driving force.
Well, when the Chaldeans came over to the U.S., most of them were in the retail business. All of them. They went into stores, and all the parents worked really hard, made good money, and then the kids went to high school, colleges, and now they're in doctors, CPAs, builders. We've changed the whole thing. We're not just in retail anymore.
As the entrepreneurial spirit is passed down to the next generation, so are the traditions that have defined the Chaldean identity. Chaldeans are more than just business people. They're also deeply social. Detroit's first Chaldean neighborhood, Chaldean Town, was a tight-knit community where many early memories were formed.
This was a very live community here. There was not hundreds, but thousands of people. Even they used to call the area here New Tel Keif. Tel Keif Khasse.
This communal spirit led to the establishment of numerous social clubs, from the storied Southfield Manor, where countless community memories were made over the preceding decades, to the Victor Soroki-designed Shenandoah Country Club, the community's crown jewel where generations of members meet.
Here's what I remember from the meetings at Southfield Manor back in the 80s, when Mike George stood trying to sell the membership to purchase Shenandoah Country Club in West Bloomfield Township, which, by the way, West Bloomfield Township in the 80s did not have as many Chaldean families that live in West Bloomfield Township today. And he kept trying to explaining to them that it's a good thing to do for our community. Many of the members who were, like you said, older in their 50s, 60s, sitting there listening to Mike George, God bless his soul, said, "We don't even golf. Why do we need to buy a golf course or a club with a golf course?" And Mike George said, "You're not buying it for yourself. You're buying it for our children and grandchildren." And look at it now. Yeah. Look at us now.
Preserving cultural heritage is essential for Chaldean Americans. From Chaldean Town to Shenandoah, pioneers like Mike George helped establish a strong foundation, and through efforts like those at the Chaldean Cultural Center, traditions, stories, and artifacts are being collected to be preserved and shared with future generations.
The idea of building this cultural center, or the museum itself, came about in the early 2000s when we acquired the Shenandoah Country Club as a golf course. And also there was about 18 acres that were not used for the golf course itself. We thought that those 18 acres are a good location to have a Chaldean center here.
So we wanted to honor those original pioneers who established what eventually became a very successful community here in Southeast Michigan. Another audience that we wanted to focus on was our children and grandchildren. We want them to know their culture, their faith, their history, their language, not only to know it, but to embrace it and be proud of it and make it a part of their lives that they would then pass on to their children and grandchildren. The third target audience was the American public in general. We wanted to tell them who the Chaldeans are, that we are from Iraq, we are Arabic speaking, and Aramaic speaking, which is really our language, and it was a language that Christ spoke.
Well, lots had happened to our people since we finished this museum, like with the Daesh taking over our hometown and taking over our church, and there was about 1.5 million Iraqi Christians. Today we are down probably a couple of 100,000. A lot of things have happened since then, and I would like to see in the museum a chapter of our people that are refugees in many, many countries, telling their story, how were they treated with the terrorist groups and why they left their hometowns.
So my job, I felt, is that to take the story of the museum and the stories within the museum, which are the 5 galleries, starting from ancient Mesopotamia to Chaldeans today, and serve it to the whole world.
The Chaldean community in Metro Detroit has grown to nearly 200,000, expanding into diverse industries and furthering its impact. Organizations like the Chaldean Community Foundation and the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce unite and empower their community, helping amplify their voices and build a legacy for the future.
Standing in front of the newest Chaldean Community Center here in West Bloomfield. We're about 9 months into construction. I'm standing in what will be our new lobby here at the Chaldean Community Center. And then directly behind me, we'll be entering the eastern portion of the building, which is the largest of the 50,000 square feet. If you go directly down this hall, you'll see a much bigger and expanded Chaldean Cultural Center, moving from Shenandoah Country Club to this facility here on Inkster and Walnut Lake Road. We're now furthest east in this facility, and they're going to share many of the other activities that we'll be offering, including this business incubator space. So you know, a lot of what we're doing here on this western building is to help preserve the Chaldean language and the culture, and in doing so, we have classrooms and other activities planned, including this protocol room. You might ask, what is a protocol room? It's unique because we do get a lot of visitors now from the Middle East and other parts of the world. And we've duplicated what they've been offering in their country. And when dignitaries come here, they'll be able to come into this facility, sit in this room as if they're in their own homeland.
The Chaldean community is a testament to resilience, innovation, and the power of preserving one's heritage. This story continues to be passed down, ensuring that future generations remain rooted in the values and traditions that have shaped their identity.
Talked about 30 seconds too long. Sorry. So, thank you for that. I'll say a few more words during the Q&A, but sorry for running long.
Thank you so much, Alex. Looking forward to hearing more. So now we move from newcomers in Detroit to indigenous communities in California's Tehachapi Mountains. I will be introducing Laura Grant and Merlene Everson, who will talk about their project, Returning to Our Roots, documenting traditional nuwä harvests. Between December 23 and November 2024, nuwä-led community collaborators, led by Elder Lucille Hicks, documented themselves sharing traditional gathering and preparation practices for at least 10 plants used for indigenous foods and medicines. The team created video-based and photographic documentation with techniques with heavy involvement from the youth. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Additionally, the project recorded the impressions and experiences of both elders and younger learners in carrying these practices forward. Laura Grant began working with the Kawaiisu community in 2007, actually it might have been earlier, documenting traditional stories, survival skills, and language. She later moved to the community to teach media production, produce media, and manage projects for the Kawaiisu Language and Cultural Center. As the lead recording technician, Laura collected videos and still images and taught interviewing skills to young participants. She is a nuwä abagip speaker and knowledgeable in traditional plant use. She lives half the time in Virginia and half the time in San Diego. She will be joined by Merlene Everson, who became a speaker of and a language teacher of nuwä abagip as an adult. As part of the project, she taught plant identification, traditional gathering practices, and related language lessons through Zoom workshops and in the field. Merlene led 20 young adults in the field and helped to conduct interviews and create video and still images, as well as translate and transcribe nuwä abagip recordings. Merlene lives in Oregon. So please welcome Laura and Merlene. Thank you.
I just wanted to start out by saying how excited and thrilled that the community was to be represented in this project. At the Library of Congress, it's a huge boost for the community that's been so worn by settler colonialism, that often it's referred to as a community that no longer exists. So it was very important to the young people that they are known as a living community, and that is represented here at the Library of Congress. That was huge for them and for our community, which is very small. We are based around Tehachapi at the very southern end of the Sierra Nevada range in Kern County, California. The community has about 1,200 members on its rolls, and it's not a federally recognized tribe, although it has a living language still. The people have been there since time immemorial, forming a relationship with this land, and it's very beautiful there. It's sort of an arid, it goes from the foothills about 4,000 feet over the mountains into the Mojave Desert. Very fragrant and beautiful, but also very arid and demanding. And the nuwä people for thousands of years have learned to live there and use the land for their sustenance. Like all California indigenous communities, they were greatly impacted by settler colonialism. But the nuwä community a little less because they were protected by their remote location in the mountains and in the desert. There weren't any very desirable things that settlers wanted, like gold or trees or things like that. So it wasn't until the 1800s that settlers began to move in and establish ranches. And of course they wanted to be where the water was most of all. And so they began to push the nuwä communities away from their gathering areas. Sometimes there were violent conflicts and the army was brought in and there were some killings and some relocations. But over time, they worked it out with the ranching communities and became their labor force, basically. Built the houses, the fences, cut the hay, herd the cows, and they're still there to this day in that area. But at the same time, as the youth started to go to school and people decided they wanted other jobs besides being ranch hands, they began to move out of the area because the cattle ranchers have acquired it all. And so we became a diaspora community. But at the same time, in the 1990s, most indigenous communities in California began reclaiming their languages and cultures, and it was through the evolution of digital media that was available. You know, you could quickly do things and create documentation and make it yourself and get it back out into the community. So I've been doing projects like that since about 1997. And I began working with Merlene's community in about 2003. At that time, there were 6 remaining speakers of their language, and they wanted to document. And we started using a lot of digital media to do that. And we formed a good relationship with the University of California, Berkeley, and the California Language Archives. And that's where we have been putting a lot of that media that we generated. And we were just a house on fire. For the past 25 years, we've just been pushing that button and recording, and we got old. Meanwhile, you know, and people we knew started to pass, right? And the kids who were like 7 or 8 when we started, they're saying, well, why weren't we there when you were doing all this and learning all this? And we were like, you were in 4th grade. You were at school, right? But, you know, it really struck me, you know, that we've lost people, like you all have been saying. That really struck me. We weren't the only ones suffering like that. We started losing people, and we have to make some replacement units for ourselves, right? And we have to get people interested, and the kids, young adults, 20, 30-somethings, were asking, we want to know this, we want to be involved. And so we pulled ourselves together, and you know, we have to create a new team of documentation specialists, and they want to put their hands on these things and learn. So the difference between what we were doing before and what we're doing now is mostly we're recording the memories of elders before, and now we're recording the youth and the young adults learning things in the field and documenting themselves. They're actually putting their hands on things and making and doing, not just listening to elder stories. So that's the main difference of what we're doing now is what we did before. And we have a good group of about 30 people who keep showing up to these things. We base our activities around Tehachapi. We come from all over, Southern California, Oregon, Virginia, and that's been a big challenge of our project, is just moving everybody back around to the homeland where they can reattach to their community and their ways. It's a very beautiful and deep tradition of interacting with the plants and gaining sustenance and building materials. We worked in, we started in April. We did spring plants and things that you gather in the spring. And then we worked again in September of 24 to do the fall harvests. And then we did a lot of interviews in January and also in December. For the people who are housebound, the elders, we went and interviewed them with our photos and our plants that we had picked. And then we did our public sharing event in April of this year, where we reconstructed an acorn granary. It was the first one that had been built in over 80 years there. And Meg came to that and froze her tush in the hail and the wind. We thought, oh, it's going to be a beautiful spring day, but no, it was not. So we did that for 2 So that has been our push, is to switch from documenting elders into including the youth and having them get agency around these things. Because what we know about archiving and documentation, even if you make the most beautiful product and you do the most rigorous archival procedures, if you don't have leadership and engagement in your community, it's just going to sit there and it's all its perfection and nobody's going to look at it. We know because we did that. We've done that already. Yeah. So I just wanted to introduce a little bit about what our push was, our goals were. We've prepared a short video that will show some of our people in action and give a little bit more history into the whys of why we do documentation. And then Merlene is going to talk about what it's meant to her family to do this work.
Hi, I'm Julie Turner. I'm Luther Corrado's daughter. And in 2009, Dad, Laura, and I did a plants project because we thought it was important to document the plants. Most of it we did in Walker Basin, right there by Dad's house, because he had everything. Because there was a village site there at one time on his property. They had the pahas there. Just because of Dad's age, and we didn't have anybody else to show us, it was, I just felt everything was important. You know, whether it was the medicine plants, food plants, you know, him telling us traditional stories. It was all important because I could see elders in other communities passing away. But it was important to document those just so my grandkids could have it, my great nieces could have it, you know, and anybody else who wanted to use it. And it doesn't matter what tribe they come from in California. It's important, all of it's important, just because it's slowly disappearing. But there are some people that, from different tribes, that have a lot of knowledge about traditional skills because they were taught, you know, to where we didn't have those things. I think a lot of it has to do with this. Ours was lost. I know we reached out to a lot of them to teach us how to do it because we're all mountain people and we all eat the same things. Sandy Clark, she's mono. We reached out to Sandy to teach us how to make acorns, you know, what do you do with them, how do you process them, and none of us had ever seen that. You know, my dad and my aunties had when they were little, but Dad would help Grandma process, you know, his job was to make the hole in the sand and get that ready, but Sandy showed us how to do all of that, so we were able to come back and reintroduce that to our community. And we've learned a lot from Sandy that we reintroduced to our community.
So going forward, now that we have a new group of young people that seem to be interested, like Avon's family and Connor, what are your thoughts on things going forward as far as the traditional?
You know, I was really surprised when you were talking about doing this project. And I was really surprised that they were all interested. You know, I just wasn't used to anybody being interested but me. And you, of course. And, you know, a little handful of people. But for the most part, I just didn't know they would be interested. I was so shocked and so happy that they were, and they are, because it's part of our identity. It's part of who they are, you know, and you know, whether they carry on with it or they can say, oh, I worked on this project and I want to teach my son how to do this, you know, speak some of the language, and, you know, because it all runs together, the language, the culture, our food practices, our traditional ways, what little we have, you know, our language and our food practices, the medicine practices, that's huge what we have for us. But I think it's great. I can't wait to see what they do next. And it's done in our traditional homeland, you know, which is awesome.
Now we've made ourselves cry. So Kleenexes. But that was this woman, Julie, provided much leadership in our community. And this interview was done in January, about a month before she passed. So that's why she sounded rough. But she's very well spoken and expressed it pretty well. But her being 59, that really, it's like, okay, you know, we really have to keep on with this. But it's a iterative process with refreshing the interest of the newer generations, and having the support of organizations like this was huge to them.
Hagrid Nam, Niagid Merlene Everson, Kutted Eagle Point, Oregon, Ivatin, Whippin, Tehachapi, California. Hello, my name is Merlene Everson. I live in Eagle Point, Oregon, but I was born in a little town called Tehachapi, California, which is where my tribe is in and around from. And it's just kind of sad because, like she said, Julie was one of our elders, and she was basically, she was my age, and it's been hard to see her and to see her go when she did so much for the community. She brought back the language classes in the Tehachapi area. She was instrumental in doing that. She was always involved in doing something in the community. And I think after my uncle had passed, she kind of just gave up after that. And the other reason is my son is 39 and he is battling cancer, and he is the one with the long hair that's stirring. And so this week they've had to put him on hospice, and I wasn't gonna come, and he said, Mom, you worked really hard on this project and I think you should go. I need you to go. And so I said, okay. He goes, you need to go represent. And so what this project has meant to us is, it's meant a lot to us because it's been able to, for us to be able to reach out to the younger generation. Laura and I will not be around forever, and we would like for some of our younger people, such as my grandson and my nephew, and our cousins, younger cousins that we have that are really interested in the language and keeping up with the traditions. We look forward to that because we know that they're the future. They're the future of our culture. They're the future of our language. My aunt is 79. She will be 80 in a month or so. And so I try to get with her every chance I can. I fly down once a month, and we go over language, and we talk language, and we talk tradition, we talk plants, and she helps me with whatever I need help in the language. And so it's just been really awesome to see the work that we've done just in the last couple of years. We had a little bit of a break. We were going strong, and then all of a sudden my uncle died and the pandemic happened, and we kind of had a little break in between when COVID was here. We weren't doing language. And then one day Laura called me and said, hey, do you want to do some more language? And I said, yes, I think it needs to be done. It's time. And so we started again, and we've just been going gung-ho and just doing everything that we can so that when we're gone, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, the other elders' children and grandchildren and cousins and nieces and nephews, they'll be able to look back and say, hey, this is what our language is. This is what our traditions are. So I think it's been really rewarding to do this project, to work on it. And it's been fun. I mean, we get together and, whereas we probably wouldn't have gotten to see each other, I go down, I see cousins that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's just really awesome. It's about family, it's about language, it's about culture, it's about keeping all of that alive. And I just really thank you. If you're a person that comes from a different language, I encourage you to go out and seek that language, learn it. Keep your language alive. Keep your traditions alive, your cultures alive. I'm a big fan of language because we've been doing it for so long. I think Laura and I said 20 years or so. But I encourage you to do that and keep your languages, your cultures, and your families alive. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have to make sure we talk right into the microphone so people can hear us in the back. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I feel so honored to just be able to hear these stories and to be part of a process that is gathering these stories. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I have some questions, but I want to just open it up because I know how frustrating it is to have a question and not get it asked. So does anybody in the audience have a question to start? Yeah, Natalie, and then John.
I found the preparation of the plants very fascinating and wanted to know how many of those were medicinal plants, and if you were sharing any of the knowledge that you have of medicinal healing plants with us.
I think the plants that we did do, some of them, there was like more than half of them, I think, could be used as medicinal plants as well, even like white sage. My uncle said that you could like brew it into a tea and use it for your stomach. So a lot of them, they did eat for sustenance, but they did use a lot of it for their medicines as well. There's one tea that they drank, and it's ephedra.
Yeah, you might have heard of it as Mormon tea. And it is ephedra. It's the same ingredient as in a lot of respiratory medications. That was one that we did. And
right. And then we did it's called Yusuf. It's salt grass, and they use that for your stomach. I think you boil it and then you make it into like a paste, and they they'd make little balls. And you could use that for your stomach, but they said don't use too much of it because it might do other things to your system. But it's a lot of the stuff that they ate. They ate off the land. They didn't go to the store. My mom said, we didn't go to the store. Mom, we'd go down and we'd pick this and we'd pick that. She said it was very rare that we would go to the store. She said maybe when Dad would get paid, we'd go and buy this or that. But we rarely went to the store. All of our food came from the land.
One thing I find really impressive is Merlene's mom. When she was a little girl, her mom was still pounding acorns in a bedrock mortar. And then she was a medical technician that would prepare the trays for surgery. I mean, it was that much of a jump in their lifestyle. And those are the kinds of adjustments that have been made. But to find those opportunities, they had to move away. And we found that coming back and being on the homeland has been the glue that's kind of helped our reclamation movement in the times that we're apart. And the young people really look forward to doing those things.
I can only imagine what it would have been like to be a fly buzzing around when everybody was gathering and hearing the stories. I think that's partly what you're alluding to, Natalie, is the stories that are shared about the food, about the plants as they're being prepared. Yeah. John, did you want to?
Yeah, so I'm always fascinated with, the reasons that immigrant groups settle in a particular area. And looking at your video, it occurred to me that the Chaldean community has been in the Detroit or southeastern Michigan for almost a century or so. And what brought the concentration of people to that neighborhood or region?
Yeah, thank you. So initially, like other immigrant groups, what attracted the Chaldeans was the $5 a day wage that Henry Ford put out there. So the automotive industry, when it was getting started, Ford shocked everyone with this sky-high wage at the time, and that attracted some people. At first it was a trickle. A few brave souls left the villages, traveled to North America. Some families, in fact, it wasn't families, it was usually just men. Some individuals came to Detroit for the work. Others actually went to Mexico. So there's a subset of the population moved to Mexico, but then a lot of them actually ended up in Detroit. As the decades passed, another factor that drew Chaldeans to Michigan, Metro Detroit in particular, is the fact that Detroit is home to a huge Arab population in Dearborn. And although the two groups are separate, coming from Iraq, their native tongue is Surath or Aramaic, but if you are in Iraq, you also naturally speak Arabic because that is the common language. That's the main national language. So I think living in Detroit maybe provided some proximity to people who at least share language, Although the two groups are fairly separate, but I would imagine in the early days having that commonality of language would have been attractive. I know some people who got into the grocery business. There were also, let's say, Lebanese people who owned grocery stores, and they were able to converse. They were able to understand each other. So I would say in the beginning, the auto industry and the language later. Yep.
Yeah, question, Martha.
Well, it's when you stood up there and you and you mentioned Tehachapi, the first thing I thought of was how Tehachapi was mentioned in my home. I'm from California, and my partner Quetzal Flores works in arts and corrections, and the first thing I thought of was the prison, right? Tehachapi prison. He went in there countless times and was working in arts and corrections through the Alliance for California Traditional Arts. And I thought, and then you started talking about the culture and like all these beautiful videos and the interaction. I thought, of course, there's a people, of course there's language, of course there's artistic practices and food and like all that. And just knowing that, I realized, again, the importance of the collection, the importance of this work. But then I realized that doesn't negate the fact that there's still a prison there, right? A federal prison, like we do in California, so many of them. And so I'm wondering, first of all, thank you for the work, but also, is there any interaction at all with the people that are in the prison and the culture there? Like, has there ever been like a conversation? Do they know the beauty that's in the area as well, and not just the bars around them?
Well, I don't know if this counts, but we have several tribal members that have been in there.
And they would always tell us stories about, being in prison and being in prison. And my aunt, who is going to be 80, she kept telling them, don't say that. Just say you were at the university. So they started saying, yeah, when we were at the university. So, yes, I believe that they do know that there is a beauty out there and that there is probably something more to the land. I think maybe those who are more indigenous or native, might feel the power of the spirit of the land more than maybe others might. But I know that one of my cousins is interactive with and wanted to become one of the advisors for Tehachapi Prison for the inmates. He was telling me about it and asked me what my opinion was. And I said, I think that's great. I think you should. I mean, this is their religion. It's not a religion like, Baptist or, anything like that. It's more of a spiritual, and not that those aren't spiritual, but they worship the land around them. They see the beauty of the land. They see the beauty of the elders who came before us. So I told him, I said, I think that's wonderful. So he was going to pursue the actions on how to become one of the advisors for the Indian community inside the prison walls, and was going to be advisor for the sweat lodge that they do there. And my other cousin, Eddie, he does a sweat lodge. I think he does one in San Fernando Valley and somewhere else. I'm not sure. He has invited me to both of those, but they are our drummers for our tribe. They come, if somebody dies, they come and they drum for us. If somebody gets married, they come and they drum for us. But all of that, again, they learned in prison or the university. So they learned all that. They had to actually go to prison to learn their culture, because we didn't know how to drum. We didn't know songs. And some of the songs that they sing are not our songs. They're Lakota songs, or they're this tribe that they learned from the inside. So, I mean, I believe that there's a great amount of influence there. And I think there can be more once, he becomes that advisor. I don't know what kind of advisor they might have now, but I know my cousin, and I know that he's very spiritual, very into his culture. Their songs, they do a wonderful job for us.
Thank you. Another question from the audience?
Since nobody else is, the video really demonstrated the Chaldean, history, right? The welcoming nature of other Chaldeans and refugees in this era, and of course the entrepreneurship, right? And I'm wondering if, when we're investing in American sort of entrepreneurship or capitalism, right? Like it's always welcomed, right? And it's a way of being here that's very understood. So I'm wondering if at any point part of that eroded any part of the cultural part, that this is something that's off the sort of was not as welcoming. What parts were not welcomed about the culture, about, and did you ever have to negotiate any part of that? I don't know if my question makes sense, but.
Do you mean in general or during the project?
So, yeah, like in general, and maybe parts of the project, right? So as far as like entrepreneurship, like yes, right? Oftentimes the United States is all for that. But when it comes to the cultural part, maybe they're like, well, we don't like this, or it becomes like a racist project, like against the race, the cultural part. Like, is there any part of it that was ever a challenge?
Okay, so I think as far as the project goes, we didn't have any kinds of issues like that. I mean, obviously, people are eager to share their success stories, and there was plenty of that. And actually, I tried to balance it. Entrepreneurship was definitely always going to be part of the story, but I tried to balance it with the fact of, what is it that makes it tick? What is it that helps them to be successful? And I think that the cohesive nature of their community, which is really through the church is sort of the glue, and some of the cultural things, food, dances, language is a big one. The fact that they are able to really stick together helps them to succeed as far as business. Okay, it wasn't much of an issue for the project, but in general, I mean, if you're asking me, I think that there's always a friction between commerce and culture. You could see it everywhere, and this is not just Chaldeans, but commerce always seems to find a way to make money out of art, and then the art suffers. So how this pertains to Chaldeans in particular, they're pretty good at preserving the culture, and I think there's a duality in. Again, I'm kind of speaking for other people, but this is just my own observation. I would say that there's a duality in how they approach business and how they approach culture, and those two things coexist. They don't really get in the way of one another, I don't think. I think both are important to them. But not at the expense of, I don't think that they would give up the culture for money. I don't think that would ever happen.
So Alex, I know you had a thought about what ties all of these projects together. I wondered if you wanted to share that with us.
Yeah, well, that thought just occurred to me while I was watching your presentation and in the previous set as well. Just one through line that, as I'm watching your stories, I'm thinking about the erasure of traditions that is happening, and in particular with language. The Chaldean community really has struggled with preserving their language, which is, they call it Surath, which is a modern dialect of Aramaic, which dates back to, Mesopotamian times. But fewer and fewer people speak it, and it becomes more and more difficult to preserve it. So I think there's a commonality there, and what I started thinking about was how important it is that these projects are done so that not only our respective individual groups are working to preserve their respective traditions, but for outside, like the general public, to pay attention to this, because I think these groups, these cultural groups, whether it be Native American groups or the displacement that Chaldeans experienced in Iraq, one thing they're like canaries in a coal mine, because with technology, language is being displaced for the rest of us, and that really concerns me, so the importance to preserve language, whether it be smaller groups or just the way the general public uses language. These stories are important. Yeah.
Thank you. Laura, is there a question?
Thank you. I had a question for all of you. Thank you for your presentations. Laura, I was just curious as to, you mentioned California linguistics program as important in your journey, like in recovering language. Did you all intersect, or Merlene, did you intersect with the California Breath of Life program at all that's run by our colleague at UC Berkeley?
Yes, the Breath of Life workshop has been going on at Berkeley originally for quite some time, led by Dr. Leanne Hinton. And Merlene and I have been to that one as well, where they bring people into the archives to find materials on their language, get linguistic mentorship to learn how to use that material so they can bring it back into use in their language communities. And so the National Breath of Life, which was here, the reading room downstairs, yay, it was so fun. We came here for 2 years, both of us. You came for 1 year, I came for 2 years, to see if there was anything here. But there's many groups in California that have no living speakers remaining, and they're reconstructing their language from the documentation. And we're kind of in that, halfway in that boat. And that's why we worked so hard to create all that language documentation in the first 20 years. Her mom, uncle and sister,
yeah.
They were first language speakers, which was very unusual in the 50s for a family to be raised that way. And so we recorded them having conversation, which is huge for us.
We did do the Breath of Life here in DC, and was there one in Berkeley too?
We've done several there.
Yeah, we did one in Berkeley as well. And my little, I say little, he's 6'4". My little grandson, I always call him my little grandson. He just got a scholarship or a mentorship program thing, kind of, they're going to teach him how to document, archive, and research our language.
It's the National Breath of Life.
Yeah, and so we're really excited about that. We're going to help him with that. I want to learn, because I mean, we want to learn. We want to leave someone, a younger person, younger generation, to do the work that we're doing now. We don't want to just leave them flat and just let the language go. So that's why we're doing these projects. That's why we're teaching language classes on Zoom. And that's why we're doing, all that we can to preserve the language and the culture. So he's going to be starting this month, and in fact, he's probably in class right now. And the guy we live in Eagle Point, he lives in Eugene, which is about 3 hours from us. And so I told him, I said, is there any problem with this coming up there if we have problems, or we need to be shown, in person what you're doing? And he said, oh, no, you can come down, or I'll go down there. So it kind of worked out that, I was like, when I find out he lived in Eugene, I said, that's close. We can drive you up there. So, but we're really excited about this other opportunity that we've been presented with. It's been a blessing.
Colleagues in Archives and Reference gave a little earlier to talk about another dimension of how the work that we do here at the AFC and colleagues at Smithsonian also help amplify and preserve community traditions and help revitalize them. So thank you all for doing the work, and thank you for using our archives.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to end. I still have a million more questions, and I'm sure you all do too. But maybe we can chat over lunch and keep the conversation going. But I so appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work that you do in your community, and thank you for making it part of our national story of who we are as a nation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.